Welcome to The Big Leap, your destination for tips and advice from marketers and masters achieving growth through retention. Presented by CleverTap, headquartered in California with offices in Mumbai, Singapore, and Dubai. CleverTap is a modern integrated retention cloud that empowers digital brands to increase customer retention and lifetime value. And value is what we discuss. This time it's growth through retention with subscription apps. Marketers need to become retention specialists and they're looking for a new playbook. And my guest today, he's made a significant contribution. He has published the Mobile Growth Stack, widely adopted as an essential framework for marketers, which he continues to develop. He'll tell us about that. The framework also forms the cornerstone of the approach his company Phiture uses to help clients grow their apps. He's the founding partner at Phiture, a mobile growth consultancy he founded, as I said, in 2016, so way at the start. And he's now got a 150 plus team with offices in New York and Berlin. He himself has over 20 years of experience in the mobile industry. And before Phiture, he led user retention teams at companies, for example, the music streaming app SoundCloud. Really interesting stint at Nokia, where he developed one of the first mobile games ever. Andy, it's great to have you here on The Big Leap. Welcome.
Thanks, Peggy. Thanks for having me on the show. Great to be here.
Well, I have to say, a personal journey that I find very exciting, right? Shooter game developer to founding a shooting star. I couldn't resist the pun. Shooting star mobile growth consultancy. Sounds exciting. Tell me a little bit about that.
My background actually is in mobile game development. So I developed some games at Nokia for their R&D facility. They didn't really call them mobile games back then because it wasn't really a term. It was just like, let's put some games on this device. So I developed one of the first arcade shoot 'em up games on a phone. I'm not sure if it was the first, but definitely pretty early days. It was a side-scrolling shoot 'em up game called Space Impact, where you had aliens coming at you from one side of the screen, and you're controlling a little spaceship, and you got to shoot them. And it was a lot of fun. So anyway, fast forward 10 years, and I've been making games basically that whole time. At some point, I got a little bit tired of making games, I have to say, and decided that I kind of wanted a bit of a change. So I took a year out. I went traveling for a year. I went to business school when I got back and did that for a year. And that's what brought me to Berlin, where I was writing my dissertation at an ad tech company called SponsorPay, now called Fiverr, recently acquired by Digital Turbine. That was a great experience, but I decided I didn't really want to work in ad tech at that point. But I wanted to stay in Berlin. It was at that time that I started looking around for what else I could do, and SoundCloud were hiring. They were looking for somebody with some mobile experience to help them to grow on mobile, and this was kind of the perfect opportunity for me to kind of combine my recent business school experience and specialism in marketing with the previous background in mobile and the mobile product development. A lot of my experience and ideas and initiatives kind of came up with this thing called the Mobile Growth Stack. Basically, I didn't call it the Mobile Growth Stack back then. It was just a slide which I put on a management presentation just to try and explain to the folks at SoundCloud what mobile was all about and what were the levers for growth for a mobile app. And it was later that I published that as a blog post and presented at a conference, and then that framework kind of took on a life of its own. So really at that point, I realized that this was something which could be interesting not just to SoundCloud, but actually to the broader industry. It was kind of at that point that myself and my co-founder Moritz, who I was working with at SoundCloud, we thought like, it could be fun to help a lot of different companies with these mobile growth challenges rather than just going deep at SoundCloud on this, where I'd been leading the retention team there, as you mentioned. We quit our jobs. We set up Phiture. It was just me and Moritz originally. Fast forward 6 years, we're 150 people. We're basically working with some amazing brands in the mobile ecosystem. We're working with folks like Lego, Adobe, HBO Max, and a few others which I can't mention. But we're working with apps all over the world, helping them to take on some of their growth challenges and really supporting them as an extension of their team.
So that brings us up to where we are now. And I have to say, you were one of the first. Finger on the pulse, Andy. I remember and really fondly remember the mobile growth stack the first time I saw it. Talk about being a bit ahead of your time. We'll talk about that in a moment. But here you are, a strong focus on subscription apps and helping companies measure and maximize, as you've said it in your presentations, subscription revenues like a boss. And it's great timing because, hey, that is a model that has legs. In what ways does marketing and growing a subscription app really require a different stack or strategy to what you've had so far?
I think one of the key differences with subscription is you're not just optimizing for a conversion, right? Just for a payment, but you're actually trying to optimize for an ongoing commitment, right? Which means that if you want to actually kind of extend your subscriber lifetime value, then you need to kind of get that user not just to buy a subscription, but that subscription is going to be on a renewal timer, on some length, might be a month, might be a week, might be a year, but at some point it's going to come up for renewal, and you want the user to keep renewing. And so there's a heavy emphasis on delivering ongoing value, right? Rather than just kind of delivering value upfront the moment that they buy. You've got to kind of sort of optimize your app and your experience for, and your marketing, of course, for ongoing relationship with the customer.
What does that actually mean in practice? You're just like constantly refining, redefining, A/B testing, even more so for other apps, or what does that mean in practice?
So in practice, of course, it depends on the app, right? I think it's probably easiest to kind of conceptualize with content-driven apps, and a lot of apps are content-driven to one degree or another. Even fitness apps, for example, is typically you've got different workouts, or yoga app, you've got all your different sort of like yoga routines and things. So a lot of these apps that are not necessarily music streaming or video streaming could still be considered content apps. But like if you've got content, then the key thing is to be continually making sure that the user is engaging with new content, and that you're showing you're producing and deploying new content into the platform, and so that subscription gives them access to new premium content on an ongoing basis. Now, if you don't have a content-driven app, it doesn't mean that you can't do subscriptions, but it means that you have to think about like how you're going to be delivering value on an ongoing basis. Right now, some apps they just inherently have some value to the user because they're solving a problem. So maybe it's a very functional app like a document scanner, for example. I'm going to use it every time I need to scan documents, and I store my copies in the cloud, whatever. I'm getting that ongoing value from the app. So in some ways they're probably easier to continue to get people to subscribe to. But I do see a lot of apps also trying to continually build out new features and functionality to try and keep users interested and engaged. I'm not always sure that you need to keep building new functionality. I think it's more about being clear about the value proposition that you're delivering, and to continue to deliver that on an ongoing basis. I think that as long as you're doing that, you don't need to be continually building new features.
Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge sometimes to, as you say, build new features. It's a call you have to take depending on your app, maybe also depending on your resources. A lot of this can test a marketer's mettle for sure, especially in a post-privacy world. What are the skills now different, perhaps, in a marketer, in a team, that you would say are table stakes to succeed in the subscription app business?
I think user research is a key one. It's definitely not specific to subscriptions, but I do think that it's constantly underrated and underutilized as a technique, right? Actually talking to users, right? Being curious about their psychology, interested in what makes the product or service great for users, and to understand their hopes and fears and frustrations, like to actually pair the human element and understanding, right, and the psychological element of what a marketer does, to the kind of slightly more like kind of quantitative data that you're going to get from analytics, whatever. I think as any marketer at the end of the day shouldn't be just looking at funnels and numbers and spreadsheets and dashboards and making decisions purely based on numbers, right? They should also be pairing that with an understanding, like, why are the numbers trending this way? What does this mean if users are dropping off here? There's a human element behind it, and so user research really helps to uncover those things. But then, having said all that, yes, also you need to be super quantitative. So you need to run a lot of tests and be data driven, data informed. But it's also about like being clear about why you're running certain experiments. What are you going to learn from them? Like thinking about the bigger picture rather than just trying to do micro optimizations the whole time.
And your data will also tell you a little bit about what you need to test and figure out. There's a lot of apps, even gaming apps, when I'm talking to marketers, and they're like, for some reason they come this far, so deep in, and then drop off somewhere. And that drop off, that's like the red flag. That's the signal that says test, optimize, experiment, throw some spaghetti on the wall. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, indeed. And, I think, it's just as we continue that theme of testing and yeah, throwing stuff at the wall, maybe like, it's good to try like bold ideas, right? I think, to my point about like micro optimization, you can optimize something to a certain level and get, some improvement from your original. If you're not iterating at all, then for sure you get some improvement just iterating on your original idea. But often the really bigger wins are when you completely change the approach, and try something radically different. So I don't know, like if you're testing an onboarding flow, for example, maybe rather than just making like small adjustments to each step in your 5-step onboarding, maybe test it against a 2-step onboarding, right? And see if taking a radically different approach is going to change things, or maybe actually a 15-step onboarding that really handholds the user through every little bit of the app is going to work way better than the 5-step one. It's not just about how many steps it is, but you get the idea. Like bigger changes tend to be the ones that have more significant results.
Interesting. And something that's really changed, marketers understand, particularly performance marketers, they know the path to purchase. We could talk for a while if it's linear or not, Andy, I won't go there, but it was sort of predictable. Now a subscription isn't a purchase. It's really a commitment. What does the journey look like for a subscription app?
Yeah, exactly, Peggy. It's it's not just about that conversion, right? Which still to this day, a lot of folks who are doing subscription optimization, they're still making it all about that purchase and like optimizing the paywall. Now, absolutely, you do need to optimize your paywalls. There's usually a fair bit of upside that you can get, and you can convert more users to a subscription and get them to make that purchase by optimizing your paywalls, like where you show them. What content is on that paywall, personalizing those paywalls for the user and making it more relevant for them. Like all of these things you should absolutely do, right? But that's just getting them to make the initial purchase. Like you also need to take that long-term approach to continuously delivering the value, as we spoke about earlier. Yeah, I think the key difference with subscriptions is you've got to build that long-term relationship. Otherwise, you can over-optimize for conversion. You can kind of trick people into buying the subscription, but if they're not happy with it long-term, they're not going to keep paying. So I think subscription is actually a very honest business model, which really favors businesses that really build for long-term customer value.
Yeah, because product was supposed to matter. Remember, it was we got derailed a little bit in optimizing the campaign, but as you said yourself, deepen the engagement because this is about the product and the value. You have to pay attention to that, but you have to pay attention to a lot of things. Talk to me about the challenges and pitfalls to watch along the way.
Yeah, so if you think about the pitfalls, like particularly around subscription, because you're not just optimizing for a short conversion within a small conversion window, but you actually have to look at like whether these users are sticking around longer term. That means like running an experiment becomes a much longer commitment, right? Like you can't just run an experiment that's looking at 3-month LTV it takes 3 months to run that experiment. You can't run it in a day and say, okay, this one's the winner, right? You might be able to get more people into a subscription, but if you want to see if they've actually stayed in that subscription for 3 months or 6 months or a year, then you're looking at like crazy time horizons for experiments, which is a bit of a change in mindset for a lot of conversion rate optimization folks who are looking to get those quick wins and to experiment on a fast cadence. So I think that there needs to be trade-offs there in terms of what you look at in the short term, what you're looking at in the longer term, and how you're kind of reconciling things on an ongoing basis to see if actually you're really moving the needle in the right direction.
And it's going to be super complex if you think about it, because if you're running a test and there's so many variables, you could imagine running a test, for example, over the upcoming holiday period, which is probably not a good idea, come to think of it, because it's so out of the norm. And then trying to see what happens, 6, 9, 12 months down the road and compare. I mean, do you have any thoughts about how actually really to do or not do these experiments?
You touched on a really good point there, seasonality. A lot of apps are very seasonal, right? For some categories, it's really critical to do things on certain dates. And of course, like, no point running an experiment, where you're comparing your January 1st cohort with a cohort that joins, in July, and trying to kind of compare like with like there. You do need to be really aware of seasonality. And yeah, if you're looking at anything on a long time horizon, there may be other things going on which are affecting it. Like maybe you have a bug in your product, right, which causes a crash, and people quit their subscriptions because they're really upset with the service they're getting at that point. There could be many things that happen in a longer time horizon that you need to kind of account for, or at least be aware of.
Another thing I hear a lot in the industry is going for the highly valuable user from the get-go. What are the signs that point to those users? What data will tell you where you need to focus your efforts?
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about here is what I've heard the term signal testing. So, and I actually included signal testing in the latest version of the mobile growth stack because I do think it becomes increasingly important. So what is signal testing? It's like getting an early signal, some kind of indicator of propensity to purchase, right? It could be propensity for anything. It could be propensity to be a highly engaged user. So whatever the revenue model, this ability to get like an early signal on the value of a user, super important. And yeah, increasingly important, I think. In an age where privacy and ability to track and understand users across different platforms becomes significantly more challenging. But yeah, no, your question was like, how do you identify these users, right? That comes down to looking at the data. Like, what are users doing in their first session or their first couple of minutes? Are they taking certain actions, right? Are these users who ended up making a purchase, if we look back at their early behavior, what did they do differently, versus the users who are typically the bigger percentage, who didn't make a purchase? Can we identify some behavioral characteristics of these users in their, things that they do early, and ideally as early as possible, particularly if you've got to fire an event back to SCAD network or something like this. But the data will guide you in terms of, what are these high value users doing, which other users are not doing. And this you can do manually, but you can also build machine learning algorithms that will try to sort of make some of these assessments and assign a kind of propensity score to these users. And then, you can actually start to validate that data by using this scoring mechanism to inform your ad spend and your marketing efforts. And then if you see that those marketing efforts are bringing you more of those high value users, then that kind of reinforces the algorithm. And similarly, if some of those assumptions that are made, are not panning out, then the algorithm will learn from that too.
Another thing you do is you advise marketers to segment and personalize the communications, the nudges, the creatives, everything that sort of moves the customer, the user through the app. Why the strong emphasis on personalization, and why now?
So, I mean, on the why now, just to answer the second part of the question first, Actually, I think you should always have been doing personalization. I think maybe if maybe the answer to why now is that it's easier than ever. We have the tools at our disposal to do personalization, so there's no excuse now. It's never been easier to deliver personalized experiences, particularly with platforms like CleverTap, that really put all of those tools at the disposal. You've got this first party data. You can see what users are doing. You can use that information to immediately start personalizing the messaging, from the moment that they're in the app, right? Let's I've just listened to a track from Britney Spears on SoundCloud. Then SoundCloud can show me a paywall with Britney Spears on it, right? So it really feels like this subscription is for me. I'm going to be able to hear loads more Britney tracks. I'm not a huge Britney fan,
I
actually,
didn't
but
think so, Andy.
but just for example purposes,
Mhm.
and like you can do that kind of thing now. You can send a push notification, hey, come back and listen to more tracks from Britney Spears, or
Yeah.
all of this stuff, and and platforms like CleverTap really kind of make that a very turnkey possibility. It's like you don't need to build a lot of really custom, you don't have to develop like custom algorithms to do this stuff. It's all there in the product, and you can basically, means that marketers have all the tools to do decent personalization at scale. And so that's the why now. It's like it's easier than ever.
Another thing that you talk about, and this is new for me, Andy, so I'm really excited to try and understand this one. Because when you have one of these things, knowing you all these years, it's something I'm going to be seeing a lot of. So I've got to learn it. And you've been talking about the way to subscription app success is to maintain a positive pulse ratio. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, so the pulse ratio, it's one of like these nebulous marketing terms. It's this idea of the number of new users plus the number of resurrected users. So basically, like your combined like active users divided by the number of dormant users, right? And that gives you what we call the pulse ratio. It's kind of like the heartbeat of your product, like how healthy is it? So a pulse ratio greater than one would indicate that you're gaining more users than you're losing. So you're on a positive growth trajectory, and you're experiencing growth. And a pulse ratio of less than one indicates you're losing more users than you're gaining, right? So you're not growing, you're shrinking.
You have worked with a lot of companies, and I would love to hear from you some sort of approach, what you think was insanely successful, okay? Super successful when it comes to reactivating churned users.
Yeah, I give an example from Visco. So VSCO, they're a platform for visual creators, so photographers, videographers, people who like want to like create and share and edit great photographs and visual media. We did a fair bit of work with Visco on improving their subscription revenue. One of the things we looked at reactivation quite a bit. So reactivating churned users or lapsed users who had been a subscriber, but that subscription had lapsed, so it did not renew. And so I'm going to give you the big secret tactic here. It's not rocket science, actually. We actually told users, hey, your subscription's expired. Maybe you'd like to renew it, right? Okay. Now I'm simplifying, of course, right? Like that was, but the basic gist of it is like, let users know that it's expired, encourage them to renew. And lo and behold, we were actually able to get a whole bunch of them to renew, who would otherwise have not renewed. We had a control group, just by literally telling them like, yes, your subscription is expired. Now, I think the real work there was not in coming up with that really clever idea, which is not super revolutionary, but rather finding the right times to tell the user that. So basically, when they were on experiences on certain screens or features of the app, where if they still had their premium account, they would have a better experience. So one specific area would be when they want to be able to download the high res versions of their images. Now, I think with the premium account, they have unlimited storage of like full high definition copies of their work that they've uploaded. Back on the free tier, they basically just get these little thumbnails, and they can take a screenshot and still kind of copy paste that. But it's like, it's a much lower res version of the image. So it's like reminding users at this point, hey, by the way, your subscription's expired. If you're wondering where all your high res, like super high def images are, they're still there, but you would need to renew in order to get access to that, that kind of, premium experience. And so it's kind of reminding people that they used to have a better experience, and if they want that back, they should renew. And that was insanely successful.
Mm-hmm. And also, to your point, you've just proven the value proposition right there, because if you were wondering, what value do I have from this subscription? I could do this normally, but now I can't. I've lost that value. And then it maybe clicks. It's like, yeah, I want that back. I want to do
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. And this is also a form of personalization, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just sending a generic message, hey, your subscription's expired, it's delivering the message, in context of what the user's doing, at a point where it's going to land well, So it's like personalization is not always about, putting some content in there that the user's engaged with, or calling the user by their first name. Personalization can be quite subtle, and just being there at the right time in a way which, acknowledges where the user is in their particular journey.
So you share a lot of best practices during the show, which is great. Free of charge here, we know a bit more than we did, which says all the time, one of your own passions. Education is a must. This is building and equipping and empowering retention specialists, marketers who see the full picture, which is what you're doing at Phiture Academy as well. Tell me a little bit about that. I was there for the launch. What is it? How can our audience get in there and soak up some of your lessons and learnings?
We're not afraid to give away what we know and to tell people what's working and what's not, what we're seeing, because we just got one perspective on it, but we're happy to share, because everybody's learning in this industry all the time. And I genuinely believe that we're all better off if we help each other out and work together. We can just accelerate, the whole topic, rather than trying to keep our little secrets together. Like, we've never been about secrets. So, in any case, so Phiture has for many years been all about knowledge sharing, and I think that Phiture Academy is a natural extension of that. So, what we're trying to build here is a slightly more structured learning platform. Essentially, it's video courses. You can consume them at your own pace. There's also sort of other material that you can download, and sort of supporting material to go with those videos in some cases. We launched with Beginner's Guide to ASO, and that's available for free on the Phiture Academy website. We've been beavering away over the last few months building out the advanced ASO course. I'm happy to say that's going to be out soon. And that's going to be a much more in-depth practical guide to ASO.
Excellent. So something to look forward to. And as you said, you share knowledge. So I want to wrap up with a couple of quick questions where we're going to learn just right off the top of your head, first thing that comes to mind, what you think is a good piece of advice. So number one, your top tactic to optimize mobile subscription revenue, as you say, like a boss, Andy.
It's personalize. We talked about personalization a lot, but it's, personalize. I've seen great results from personalizing paywalls based on user behavior. If you're not sure what to personalize on, and you're not quite sure like what data to use, then ask the user with a survey or a pop-up in-app message. You can deliver these through CleverTap. Just ask the user, the information that you'd like to use then to personalize, and then use that information to personalize the experience. It's again, not rocket science, but a lot of apps don't do it. Gather some information from the user, either explicitly or implicitly from their actions, and then use that information to deliver something which is more tailored to them.
Mm-hmm. Everyone learns from their mistakes. And you have a podcast you co-host. Love the name, by the way, Mobile Growth Nightmares. I'll be telling our audience all about it in the show notes, also that they need to check it out. So drawing from your own experiences as well, what's an example of something that would keep you up at night?
Well, Yeah, I mean, many things keep me up at night, Peggy. But but I'm always terrified that we'll send out a campaign. Whether that's thinking about CRM campaigns particularly, sending something out to the wrong user segment. We've had folks on the show who've talked about times when they sent out a push notification that was supposed to go to a small test group and instead went to 10 million users. Of course, it's not usually life or death. We're not in like thankfully we're not working in a emergency room here. So I guess at the end of the day, if one of our customers got if we set out a campaign on behalf of one of our customers to their whole user base, I guess we would probably, nobody would die, but it would be pretty traumatic if we're sending out something which is not the right campaign or not the right audience. It's just things like that. I guess it's a relatively trivial nightmare, but as an agency, we're being put a lot of trust in us from some really great brands, and we take that really seriously. We want to do a really great job for them. I think we often, hopefully, always do a really great job for them. But it really does keep me up at night that we're just one mistake away from really they're paying us so that they don't make those mistakes, right? So that's what keeps me up at night, is that level of responsibility.
And you learned from them. I had a great interview recently, Andy. I have to share it because you're talking about, sending out the wrong message. Talking to a marketer, and he had his the budget and the bids just sort of all mixed up, and instead of dollar cents, it was dollars. So it was ended up just being a massive amount of money. But the point is, he said, but then we got a real handle on incrementality because we had all of these users, because they spent like $1 million in a weekend. We got a lot of new users, and we could test some incrementality theories. So there's always an upside. I want to end with your golden rule of growth through retention. Now, we talked about personalization, so let's rule that one out. You can't go back to that one. We know we need to personalize. This is about growth through retention. So LTV, recurring revenue, lasting loyalty. What's your tip?
So I'm not going to say anything about personalization, but I am going to go back to a previous point,
Okay.
And that's talk to your users. That's my golden rule, not just for retention, but I think particularly if you want to keep users around, you need to understand them, and that comes from talking to them. And the reason that I'm reiterating this point is because a lot of folks that we see in the startup industry and in the digital space, they're relying so much on the quantitative data that they forget to actually talk to the users. They forget that there's real people behind those numbers. And that's my golden rule. I find it always really, really revealing. If you do a quick user test, you can get some quick qualitative information. You run a couple, and you'll soon see some patterns in the responses that you're getting that are not visible from the numbers. And and when you pair that qualitative information with your quantitative, that's where the real magic happens.
In the meantime, I know you're going to be, well, you're always in Berlin, but you're going to be at a couple shows in Berlin. So, our audience, if they're there, they could catch up with you, share some tips, knowledge sharing. But in the meantime, elsewhere, how could our audience stay in touch with you and what you're doing at Phiture and those amazing blogs that you keep coming up with?
Sure, yeah. So we have a couple of blogs, Mobile Growth Stack blog and ASO Stack blog. You can reach them both from the Phiture website. So it's phiture.com, Phiture.com. That's you can also contact me there through our contact form, but you can also find me on Twitter. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm there, Andy Carvell. Or you can find me at shows. I'm at a lot of the conferences and stuff. Be really keen to hear from anyone who's heard the podcast. Feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Well, I'll see you at the show. And in the meantime, Andy, thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you, Peggy. It's been a pleasure.